Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, let's learn what happened to the old medieval English flag. Yeah, this one's cool. I always pictured on a suit of armor. Do I have a guess? No. Claim to French land that they didn't claim anymore, and so it didn't make sense.
George's flag come from, and what was the history behind this?
Oops, I didn't mean to let it run that far.
This is the flag of England, and Genoa, and Padua, and Bologna, and it's the flag of a lot of places.
Simple
design. It's called the St. George's Cross, and it's named after this legendary figure who was probably a Roman general who killed a dragon and became a saint. But in this video, I want to look at its particular association with England, as well as some other English flags, because there's also this other flag that you can see on the left.
History with Hilbert, guys. Did I say that? Original link, top description.
Middle Age English flags, because there's also this other flag that you can see on the left that was used during the Middle Ages in England. And where did actually this St. George's flag come from? And what was the history behind this other flag? And why is it not used as the quote-unquote national flag?
Is it just relegated to ceremonial
stuff? So let's first take a look at the three lions. And the first time we see this is in the reign of Richard I, who came to the throne in 1189, so the end of the 12th century. And it's actually in 1198, a year before his death, that in the second seal that we see that he is using a lion there. And this is the first time we see an English king doing this. Now, his father was Henry II, who was actually the first Plantagenet king of England, and they would rule right up until the death of Richard III in 1485. But essentially, the Plantagenets were descended from a different family, but before that, it had been Norman kings in England, and it's quite...
I really wish it was easier for me. Back 5 seconds. If it would be a lot easier for me if Richard the First, Second, Third, whatever, and then Henry 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, George 1, 2, 3, but it always goes around, and then I need to learn.
Were descended from a different family, but before that it had been Norman kings in England, and it's quite possible that the Normans had some sort of lion on their banner as well. Of course, a lion is now also associated with Normandy in their heraldry, and possibly actually this went back way further to some of the Danish kings in the 10th century who might have had some kind of lion banner as well, but we're not entirely sure, and none of them have survived to us today, although some of the Germanic tribes were using lions as part of their symbols. This was obviously before heraldry was a major thing. Now, this was because during Richard I's reign there are 3 lions, because he was King of England as well as Duke of Aquitaine, so in the southwest of France, and also the Duke of Normandy. And if you want to find more out about the Duchy of Normandy and its Viking roots, then you can do that here. So that explains the lions. But for the rest of this heraldic flag, as what we can call it, of England, then we need to go back to 1340, and this is a very important year because
hold on. Why a lion at all? Like, why, regardless of where you picked it, or of where, it traces its, because these aren't exactly places where I imagine, like in Germany or England, where I imagine lions being. I would assume they are symbols taken from Roman times. I mean, a lion is a cool looking animal, okay? It's got the giant mane. Fierce, dangerous. Also, the eagle is used pretty often. 2 awesome animals that are powerful and like king of the place around them. So it makes a lot of sense why you would choose a lion. Why not a tiger, though? Probably because they were less common in around the Mediterranean. So I feel like I'm answering my own questions
here. For the rest of this heraldic flag, as what we can call it, of England, then we need to go back to 1340. And this is a very important year because this is when Edward III was reigning, and he declared war on the French and declared himself the King of France. And of course, this kick-started the 100 Years' War, which I've talked about before on this channel, which lasted longer than 100 years and was probably several wars. But the crux of it was that the English kings were also claiming the throne of France. And this is where we see various heraldic symbols being used on both sides in this depiction of the 100 Years' War. And essentially one of them, the one that the French are wearing, is called the fleur de lis. And I've talked about this in this video, for example, if you want to know more about the fleur de lis. But essentially, because they claim to be the kings of France as well.
Hey, I was right. I'm not right often, okay? And so when I am, I'm happy. But looks kind of funny because it's like, oh, we're France. Oh, we're England and France.
One that the French are wearing is called the fleur de lis, and I've talked about this
Like
in
a
this
diss.
video, for example, if you want to know more about the fleur de lis. But essentially, because they claim to be the kings of France as well, they also took the French royal symbol, the fleur de lis, these flowers, and put them on, quartered them with the 3 lions that had come to stand for the English realms as well. And actually, when the French House of Capet, when they became extinct, that actually starts off the 100 Years' War, but when they switch in France from having lots and lots of the fleur de lis on a blue background to just having 3, the English keep up and they also switch up their flag to then match this as well. But what about the St. George's flag? What about this nice red cross on a white background? Where does this come into play? Well, actually, this comes into play during the reign of Edward I, and it's during the Second Barons' War, when several of the barons, led by Simon de Montfort, were rebelling against him, that in battle in 1265, the Battle of Evesham, the royalist troops were wearing red crosses to differentiate themselves from the enemy, who apparently wore white crosses. Now, it's possible this is a very similar story to one that we get from the Crusade with Richard the Lionheart, who I mentioned earlier, but then it's mentioned very explicitly that the English were wearing white crosses, whereas the French soldiers were wearing red crosses. Although it's true that the cross of St. George became a very popular symbol. St. George was a popular saint, he was a warrior saint, of course, and so he became popular during the Crusades as well, and it's possible that they took this back home to England, which is what we see happening at the Battle of Evesham. Now, another saint that was very popular as well as George was actually Edward. Now, Edward had also been a king of England, except he's Edward the -2, because Edward I is actually the 3rd or 4th of the Edwards to come to the throne, but they actually only start counting the kings when the Normans come in.
Interesting.
So this Edward was also known more.
I thought that was just a hyphen.
Start counting the king.
Wait, is that a hyphen? I'm so dumb. Yes, it is. I'm having a brain...
3rd or 4th of the Edwards to come to the throne, but they actually only start counting the kings when the Normans come in. So this Edward was also known more commonly today as Edward the Confessor, and he was an Anglo-Saxon king. Now, I actually talked about him in this video if you're interested in learning more about exactly what he did, but for the rest, he's not particularly related to this video, because he died in 1066, so this is long before many of the events we're talking about in this video. But in 1161, he was made a saint, so that's why he was called, Saint Edward. And this is the Saint Edward that's being referred to a lot of the time. That's
how do you become a... That's not... Oh my god, I got distracted. How do you... becoming a saint, doesn't that mean you die? Step 1, die. Right? And then you have to have miracles attributed to you? But I mean, how do you even... Doesn't that mean you can just make anyone a saint that you want? Because if you look hard enough, I'm sure you can... Or you can just make it up, or... I don't know. Becoming a saint, still a little strange.
possible that this was because he had been celibate, and of course this kind of messed England up with the whole 1066 situation. But his flag essentially looks something like this, his standard with these birds, and we only get, much later depiction of this. However, we do see this on some of Edward the Confessor's coinage, with the 4 birds being on the right there. So possibly this was a much older symbol that had been associated with King Edward for a long time, and this then found its way onto later medieval banners as well. Now, he was especially revered by King Henry III, and we know this because in 1239, the reason that he called his eldest son Edward was because of this Edward. And yes, this Edward I is also the same Edward I who put the
Longshanks.
Yeah. Anyway, there's another saint who was called St. Edmund, and he is another Anglo-Saxon. He's also known as Edmund the Martyr, and he became canonized upon his death, and this was because he died at the hands of the Danes during the Great Heathen Army. He was king of East Anglia, and he was shot full of arrows.
Oh, so like a martyr.
Therefore, he became a saint because he died as a martyr at the hands of pagans. And basically, one of those who killed him was called a certain Urba. Now, Urba is also known as the Dux Frisonum in Latin, and he was probably from or used his base on the island of Walcheren, which, hold on a minute, where is that today? That was most associated with this Saint Edmund were these three crowns, again often on a blue background. So for a lot of the Middle Ages, you had lots of different standards that were being used. Of course, this is before the great age of the nations.
I love this cross.
State, and so the whole kind of idea that used, of course, this is before the great age of the nation state, and so the whole kind of idea that England should have a flag or anywhere has one particular flag wasn't in vogue yet. So they had lots of different flags, loads of different banners, and you know, these were just some of the more famous saints who had their own flags. That is until 1346 when Edward III, who again I've already mentioned,
like hearing a time before nation states breaks my brain.
He's the one that's sort of 46 when Edward III, who again I've already mentioned, he's the one that sort of kicks off the 100 Years' War against the French. It's when he, during the Battle of Crécy against the French, we can see the fleur-de-lis being used there.
I'm sorry, I can't go past that. How is a nation different from a kingdom? Or different from an empire? How are they different exactly? And is the difference that significant?
Again, I've already mentioned, he's the one that's 1346 when Edward III, who again I've already mentioned, he's the one that sort of kicks off the 100 Years' War against the French. It's when he, during the Battle of Crécy against the French, we can see the fleur-de-lis being used there as well, when they're fighting against each other, he actually has a divine intervention. He says, you know, he gets this vision, and it's of St. George, and George helps him win the battle, so the legend goes, and that's why he then honors him by being particularly venerated during his reign and by using his symbol a lot. Now we can see here as well during the Peasants' Revolt, this is Wat Tyler leading the peasants forward, that they're using both the kind of royal banner with the fleur-de-lis and with the three lions, as well as St. George's flag that's there. In this one, for example,
the insane, I was about to say the balls, the courage that I would be so of starting a peasants' revolt, in that I feel like there are so many ways you're going to be found out, or someone's going to, you know, snitch on you or be bribed, and then you're done. Interesting.
With the three lions, as well as both the kind of royal banner with the fleur-de-lis and with the three lions, as well as St. George's flag that's there. And this one, for example, is a Tudor ship that was released during the reign of Henry VIII, and you can see there that St. George's banner is very popular. Now this is the situation that kind of continues up until the English Reformation, and during this time we get in 1552 the release of a new prayer book, the Common Book of Prayer. This is during the reign of Edward VI, by the way. If you're interested, I talk about it more in this video. And this is when they mandate that St. George's flag is the only saint's symbol or saint's flag that is allowed to be used, because all the others are just symbols of kind of the popery and the Catholics, and that's bad, and they don't want that anymore, because England had become very Protestant, almost as Protestant as it ever would, apart from under Oliver Cromwell during Edward's very short reign. And so St. George's flag became the official flag, and the others were suppressed. Now in 1606, 3 years after the union of England and Scotland together under James I of England, and I think the 6th of Scotland, they actually melded together the St. George's flag as well as St. Andrew's flag, which is the Scottish saltire, and together they formed this flag with superimposing the one above the other. And this is of course the ancestor of the modern British flag, or the Union flag as it's often called, which, you know, flew over a large part of the world and has been incorporated into many flags because of, well...
Hey, did you guys get the idea for red, white, and blue from us and our flag? Sorry, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm sorry. Doing a little
Alright,
trolling
everyone,
here.
so thank you very much for watching. This has been my video on some of the medieval flags of England and why today it is the St. George's flag that was chosen to be England's national flag. Of course, it's very important because it did eventually make up part of the British flag as well, and today does the Union flag. And I thought the history was quite interesting, that there were lots of saints that had flags, and that these flags were obviously taken into battle at various places, and some were favoured more by various kings, but then that eventually St. George's flag was the flag that was most favoured. If you did enjoy the video, I'd appreciate you giving me a thumbs up.
Didn't expect connection to Protestantism, but
in the comments below, and sharing it around really does help as well, because then I know that you've enjoyed it and that you want to see more stuff like this. Please do check out some of the other videos if you haven't seen them and you thought they'd be interesting, and don't forget to have a great day. This has been The History, and
Oh, sorry.
I've been Hilbert.
Awesome video. Too hard to draw. Thanks. I could have just read that. Would never have been popular as there's no room to put which football team you support during the World Cup. Damn French, but aren't we Normans? Shut thee up. People are funny. All right. Love y'all. Hope you guys are all doing well. Would appreciate any comments down below, any answers to any questions I had, however ridiculous they were. You guys are always awesome with that. Hopefully I'll see you next video. Bye, guys.